Close your eyes and prepare to journey back to the most powerful empire in human history. An empire that ruled over 50 million square miles and governed the lives of 65 million people for over 1,000 years. Tonight we're uncovering the hidden truths of Rome, secrets that have been buried beneath centuries of legend and myth. As you settle into comfort, imagine standing on the 7 hills of ancient Rome, watching the sun set over marble columns and golden domes. Feel the weight of history around you. The whispers of emperors and gladiators, senators and slaves, all part of an incredible story that shaped the world we live in today. But this isn't the Rome you learned about in school. Tonight, you'll discover the hidden mechanisms of power that kept this empire together for centuries, the secret innovations that modern governments still use, and the untold stories of ordinary Romans whose lives reveal extraordinary truths about human nature and civilization. The Roman Empire wasn't just about conquest and warfare. It was humanity's most successful experiment in organization, engineering, and cultural synthesis. From a small city-state on the Italian peninsula, Rome grew to control territory from Britain to North Africa, from Spain to Syria. How did they do it? What secrets did they discover about human nature, governance, and the art of building lasting institutions? As you drift deeper into relaxation, let the ancient voices of Rome guide you through their remarkable story. A tale of ambition and wisdom, innovation and adaptation that continues to influence our world today. The traditional story tells us that Rome was founded by Romulus and Remus, twin brothers raised by wolves. But archaeological evidence reveals a much more fascinating truth about Rome's early development, one that explains how a small Italian city became the master of the Mediterranean world. Rome's greatest secret wasn't military might, it was inclusiveness. Unlike other ancient powers that ruled through domination, Rome discovered the revolutionary concept of integration. When they conquered a territory, they didn't just extract tribute. They offered something unprecedented in the ancient world, the possibility of Roman citizenship. This wasn't charity, it was strategic genius. By gradually incorporating conquered peoples into Roman society, they transformed potential enemies into loyal allies. A Gaul could become a Roman senator, a Greek could serve as a Roman governor, a Syrian could command Roman legions. This flexibility gave Rome access to the talents and resources of the entire Mediterranean world. The early Roman Republic developed institutions that balanced competing interests in ways that prevented any single faction from gaining absolute control. The system of consuls, senators, tribunes, and assemblies created checks and balances that would later inspire the founding fathers of modern democracies. But the Romans understood something that many modern governments struggle with: the importance of civic virtue and shared responsibility. Rome's location was also strategically brilliant. Positioned on the Tiber River, just far enough inland to avoid naval raids but close enough to access maritime trade, Rome could control both land and sea routes. The 7 hills provided natural defenses, while the fertile surrounding countryside could support a large population. But perhaps most importantly, early Romans developed a culture that valued practical achievement over theoretical knowledge. They weren't just dreamers. They were builders, engineers, and organizers who could turn grand visions into concrete reality. This practical mindset would serve them well as they expanded beyond Italy into the wider world. Roman engineering wasn't just impressive, it was revolutionary in ways that transformed human civilization. The Romans didn't just build roads, they created the world's first integrated transportation network. They didn't just construct aqueducts, they developed water management systems that supported urban populations previously impossible to sustain. The famous Roman roads weren't just paths between cities. They were precision-engineered highways built to last millennia. Roman surveyors could plot straight lines across hundreds of miles of varied terrain, while engineers developed construction techniques that created roadbeds so durable that many are still in use today. The saying, "all roads lead to Rome," wasn't just metaphorical. It described a carefully planned network that facilitated rapid communication and troop movement across the entire empire. But the aqueduct system was perhaps even more remarkable. Roman engineers could transport fresh water across dozens of miles, using nothing but gravity and precise mathematical calculations. The aqueducts weren't just functional. They were architectural masterpieces that demonstrated Rome's power and sophistication to everyone who saw them. Cities throughout the empire enjoyed clean running water, public baths, and sanitation systems that wouldn't be matched again until the modern era. Roman concrete was a technological breakthrough that enabled architectural innovations impossible with earlier building materials. They discovered how to create hydraulic cement that actually grew stronger underwater, allowing them to build massive harbors, bridges, and buildings that could withstand centuries of use. The Pantheon in Rome, completed nearly 2,000 years ago, still holds the record as the world's largest unreinforced concrete dome. Their military engineering was equally sophisticated. Roman legions could build fortified camps in a matter of hours, construct siege engines that could breach the strongest walls, and create bridges that allowed entire armies to cross major rivers. But they also used engineering for peaceful purposes, constructing theaters, amphitheaters, basilicas, and public buildings that brought Roman culture to every corner of the empire. The Romans understood that engineering wasn't just about solving technical problems. It was about creating the infrastructure of civilization itself. Their buildings, roads, and water systems didn't just serve immediate needs. They created environments where commerce, culture, and community could flourish for generations. The Romans discovered psychological principles of leadership and governance that modern political scientists are only beginning to fully understand. They realized that lasting power couldn't be maintained through fear alone. It required creating systems that made people want to participate in Roman civilization. The concept of Roman citizenship was a masterful psychological innovation. By making citizenship something that could be earned through military service, public contribution, or imperial favor, Rome created a powerful incentive system that motivated people throughout the empire to actively support Roman rule. Citizens enjoyed legal protections, economic opportunities, and social status that made Roman identity desirable rather than imposed. Roman religious policy demonstrated sophisticated understanding of cultural psychology. Instead of destroying local gods and customs, Romans typically incorporated them into their own religious system. They recognized that people's spiritual beliefs were deeply connected to their sense of identity and community. By respecting local traditions while gradually introducing Roman practices, they created cultural synthesis rather than cultural conflict. The Roman education system was designed to create shared values and common identity across diverse populations. Roman schools taught not just practical skills but also civic virtues, historical knowledge, and cultural appreciation that helped bind the empire together. They understood that lasting unity required more than military conquest. It needed intellectual and emotional connection. Roman law represented another psychological breakthrough, the creation of universal principles that could apply fairly to people from different backgrounds and cultures. The concept that law should be rational, consistent, and impartial was revolutionary in a world where justice typically depended on personal relationships or arbitrary royal decree. Roman legal thinking created frameworks for resolving disputes and organizing society. The Roman economy was surprisingly modern in many ways. They had banking systems, insurance concepts, commercial law, and trade networks that facilitated business across vast distances. Roman merchants developed credit systems, standardized currencies, and commercial partnerships that enabled economic complexity rivaling modern markets. Archaeological evidence suggests that ordinary Romans enjoyed consumer goods from throughout the known world: Chinese silk, Indian spices, Germanic amber, and British wool. Roman urban life was remarkably sophisticated. Cities throughout the empire featured paved streets, public fountains, sewage systems, public baths, libraries, and entertainment venues that provided quality of life that many medieval cities wouldn't match for centuries. Even ordinary Romans had access to amenities and services that were luxuries in other civilizations. But perhaps most importantly, ordinary Romans developed social institutions that created stability and meaning in daily life. Neighborhood associations, professional guilds, Religious communities and extended family networks provided support systems that helped people navigate the challenges of urban life. These social innovations enabled Roman cities to support population densities that wouldn't be seen again until the Industrial Revolution. Roman dining culture reveals sophisticated understanding of social psychology. The elaborate dinner parties that Romans are famous for weren't just about food. They were carefully orchestrated social events that reinforced relationships, negotiated business deals, and transmitted cultural values. The Roman approach to hospitality created networks of obligation and friendship that helped hold society together. Roman military success wasn't just about superior equipment or tactics. It was about organizational innovations that transformed warfare and created the world's most effective fighting force. The Roman legion represented a revolutionary approach to military organization that combined discipline, flexibility, and technological superiority in ways that dominated battlefields for centuries. The Roman manipular system allowed legions to adapt to different terrain and enemy tactics with unprecedented flexibility. Unlike the rigid phalanx formations used by earlier armies, Roman legions could maneuver in small units, respond quickly to changing conditions, and maintain cohesion even in difficult circumstances. This tactical flexibility gave Roman armies decisive advantages over more traditional opponents, but Roman military innovation extended far beyond battlefield tactics. They developed professional military engineering capabilities that allowed armies to build fortifications, siege equipment, and infrastructure on campaign. Roman legions could construct fortified camps in hours, build bridges to cross major rivers, and create siege works that could breach the strongest fortifications. This engineering capability meant that Roman armies could operate effectively in any environment and overcome obstacles that would stop other forces. Roman logistics were equally revolutionary. They created supply systems that could maintain armies in the field for extended campaigns, established veteran settlements that provided both military reserves and agricultural development, and developed training programs that could quickly integrate new recruits into experienced units. The Roman military wasn't just an army, it was a comprehensive system for projecting and maintaining power across vast distances. The Romans also pioneered psychological warfare techniques that often won battles before they began. Roman military reputation was so formidable that many enemies surrendered rather than face Roman legions in battle. But this reputation was carefully cultivated through consistent military success, generous treatment of allies, and harsh punishment of those who resisted Roman authority. Roman naval innovations were equally important, but often overlooked. Roman engineering enabled the construction of harbors that could support large fleets, while Roman organizational skills created naval forces that could coordinate with land armies to project power across water barriers. The Mediterranean became a Roman lake, not just because of naval supremacy, but because of integrated land-sea military strategies. Perhaps most importantly, Romans understood that military success required more than winning battles. It required creating conditions for lasting peace. Roman military colonies, veteran settlements, and provincial administration were designed to transform conquered territories into productive parts of the empire, rather than just tribute-paying subjects. The transition from Roman Republic to Roman Empire wasn't just a political change. It was a fundamental transformation in how human societies could be organized and governed. Augustus Caesar didn't just become emperor. He created new models of leadership that influenced governance for centuries to come. The genius of Augustus was recognizing that traditional republican institutions had become inadequate for governing a world empire, while simultaneously understanding that Romans valued their republican traditions too deeply for him to openly establish a monarchy. His solution was to create new forms of authority that appeared to preserve republican forms while concentrating real power in imperial institutions. The Augustan settlement established what historians call the Principate, a system where the emperor was theoretically just the first citizen among equals, but practically held supreme authority over military, religious, and civil affairs. This careful balance between republican tradition and imperial necessity allowed Rome to maintain stability while adapting to new challenges. Imperial administration became a sophisticated system for governing diverse populations across vast distances. Roman provincial governors weren't just military commanders. They were administrators who managed complex economic, legal, and cultural affairs. The empire developed standardized procedures for taxation, justice, public works, and military recruitment that could be applied consistently across different regions and cultures. The Roman imperial cult wasn't just religious ceremony, it was a political innovation that created loyalty bonds between distant subjects and the imperial government. By making worship of the emperor a civic duty rather than just religious obligation, Romans created emotional and spiritual connections that transcended ethnic and geographical boundaries. But perhaps most remarkably, the Roman Empire developed institutional mechanisms that allowed for peaceful transfers of power and adaptation to changing circumstances. While individual emperors might be incompetent or corrupt, the imperial system itself proved remarkably resilient and capable of reform. Good emperors like Trajan, Hadrian, and Marcus Aurelius could implement beneficial changes that affected millions of people across multiple generations. The empire also created opportunities for social mobility that were unprecedented in the ancient world. Talented individuals from throughout the empire could rise to positions of authority and influence regardless of their ethnic background or geographic origin. This meritocratic element helped ensure that Roman government had access to the best talents from across the known world. Rome's greatest achievement wasn't military conquest but cultural synthesis, the ability to absorb and integrate the best elements from every civilization they encountered. Roman culture wasn't just Latin. It was a sophisticated blend of Greek philosophy, Egyptian wisdom, Celtic traditions, Germanic customs, and countless other influences that created something entirely new. Roman literature represents this synthesis beautifully. Virgil's Aeneid drew upon Greek epic traditions while creating distinctly Roman themes about duty, sacrifice, and imperial destiny. Ovid's poetry combined Greek mythological knowledge with Roman sensibilities about love and transformation. Cicero's speeches and essays adapted Greek philosophical concepts for Roman political and legal thinking. Roman architecture and engineering created visual languages that communicated Roman values while adapting to local conditions and preferences. Roman buildings throughout the empire shared common design elements that proclaimed Roman identity, but they also incorporated local materials, traditions, and aesthetic preferences that made them feel indigenous rather than imposed. Roman legal thinking created frameworks that could accommodate different cultural traditions while establishing universal principles of justice and social organization. Roman law wasn't just a set of rules. It was a systematic approach to thinking about human relationships, property rights, and social obligations that could be adapted to different circumstances while maintaining coherent principles. The Roman approach to religion demonstrated remarkable sophistication about human spiritual needs. Instead of imposing a single religious system, Romans created frameworks that allowed different traditions to coexist, while gradually developing shared practices and beliefs. This religious tolerance wasn't just practical politics. It reflected deep understanding of how spiritual beliefs function in human communities. Roman educational systems spread literacy, mathematical knowledge, engineering skills, and cultural appreciation throughout the empire. Roman schools didn't just teach practical skills. They transmitted values, historical knowledge, and intellectual capabilities that created shared identities across diverse populations. The Roman educational legacy influenced European development for centuries after the empire's political collapse. But perhaps most importantly, Romans demonstrated that human beings could create peaceful, prosperous, and culturally rich societies that transcended tribal and ethnic boundaries. The Roman Empire proved that diversity could be a source of strength rather than division when properly managed and channeled. While traditional histories focus on Rome's military might or political genius, the empire's extraordinary longevity reveals deeper truths about successful civilization building. Rome lasted over 1,000 years because it created systems that could adapt, evolve, and regenerate themselves across changing circumstances. Roman institutional flexibility allowed the empire to survive challenges that destroyed other civilizations. When the Republic proved inadequate for governing a world empire, Romans created the Principate. When external pressures mounted, they developed new military strategies. When economic conditions changed, they adapted taxation and administration systems. This adaptability wasn't accidental. It was built into Roman approaches to governance and law. The Roman commitment to infrastructure investment created lasting foundations for prosperity and stability. Roman roads, aqueducts, harbors, and public buildings weren't just impressive monuments. They were productive investments that generated economic benefits for generations. Modern economists studying Roman development are struck by how consistently Romans prioritized projects that created long-term value rather than just immediate gratification. Roman social mobility mechanisms prevented the rigid class stratification that weakened other societies. While Rome certainly had social hierarchies, it also maintained channels for advancement that allowed talented individuals to rise regardless of their origins. This meritocratic element ensured that Roman leadership had access to the best capabilities from throughout the empire. But perhaps most importantly, Romans created cultural and spiritual frameworks that gave people reasons to support Roman civilization, beyond mere economic or political calculation. Roman identity wasn't just about citizenship papers. It was about participating in humanity's most successful experiment in organized society. People throughout the empire took pride in Roman achievements and wanted to contribute to Roman success. The Roman approach to knowledge, preservation, and transmission ensured that valuable insights wouldn't be lost when individual leaders died or political circumstances changed. Roman libraries, schools, and scholarly traditions created institutional memory that allowed each generation to build upon previous accomplishments, rather than starting from scratch. Even when the Western Empire eventually fell to barbarian invasions and internal divisions, Roman ideas, institutions, and cultural achievements continued to influence European development. The Byzantine Empire preserved Roman political and legal traditions for another 1,000 years, while the Catholic Church maintained Roman organizational principles and Latin scholarly traditions throughout medieval Europe. As our journey through the hidden truths of Rome comes to an end, let yourself sink deeper into comfort and relaxation. You've traveled through over 1,000 years of history, walking beside emperors and slaves, senators and soldiers, engineers and philosophers who created the foundations of Western civilization. The secrets of Rome aren't really hidden. They're embedded in the institutions, ideas, and cultural traditions that continue to shape our world today. Every time you drive on a highway, use a legal contract, participate in democratic government, or enjoy urban amenities, you're benefiting from Roman innovations and insights. As you drift toward peaceful sleep, carry with you the inspiration of Roman achievement, the demonstration that human beings can create societies based on law rather than arbitrary power, that different cultures can synthesize into something greater than their separate parts, and that civilizations built on justice and opportunity can endure for centuries. Let the steady march of Roman legions fade into the gentle rhythm of your breathing. Allow the whispered conversations in Roman forums to become the quiet murmur of your settling into rest. Feel the solid foundation of Roman engineering supporting you as you relax, knowing that you're part of an ongoing human story that began in those 7 hills beside the Tiber River. The Roman Empire showed us that ordinary people can accomplish extraordinary things when they work, together with vision, discipline, and respect for both tradition and innovation. That same potential lives within you, waiting to be awakened by your own dreams and aspirations. Sleep well, knowing that the Eternal City's greatest triumph wasn't conquering the world. It was proving that human civilization could create beauty, justice, and lasting prosperity. May the wisdom of Rome guide your dreams and inspire your tomorrows. Sweet dreams. And may the eternal spirit of Roman achievement bring you peace and strength for all your journeys ahead.